timing that's going to take place for some of these cities. For example, here is a look where you can see right here about Jackson, Mississippi. You've got right there along Interstate 55 and also 20. Now, as we go through the day, again, we've got some sporadic showers with the potential, but the real impact, the main line, really doesn't come in until after lunchtime today. Now, the hope is that for a lot of these folks, maybe we'll be able to squeeze the worst of it out just before the evening rush hour commute. That would be fantastic. However, with that said, if you get any accidents 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that could cause some delays that would carry through into your evening commute as well. Here's a look at Jackson, Mississippi. Again, we've got the chance for some sporadic showers here and there, but really the bullseye is going to be just around lunchtime and thereafter, leading up to your evening commute. Here is a look at Nashville, for example. Another concern where we may have a few spotty showers into the morning, but once we get right to about the late morning and closer into lunchtime, that's where we're going to see some of those heavier showers finally begin to build back into the area. But the good news for Nashville, because it's going to be earlier, at least Mark, these folks won't have to deal with it necessarily for their evening commute. Now, unfortunately, the fire threat not only continues for today, but it actually gets worse. As we looked at it yesterday, this red region that you see here, which is the critical region, was much smaller, much more compact. Today, we have really seen that take off. And also, adding in some of that extreme layer also starting to expand as well. So that's going to be the concern, not just that we have the fire threat, but that now we're starting to add more people that didn't necessarily have the fire threat yesterday. Again, all of these regions are under a concern for today for multiple reasons. We've got some very strong winds in a lot of these places setting up, but also the humidity. Watch as these humidity levels drop from the 20 and the 30% range in some areas down to single digits. We're talking 6, 7% humidity. Again, these are numbers that even sometimes Arizona can get higher than. So again, it's incredibly dry air. Now you're starting to factor in some of those strong winds. So anything that could trigger that fire is going to take off and spread very quickly. We have high wind warnings in place for all of this darker purple shade area here, and the lighter purple is under a high wind watch. So that's going to be the threat for today. Here's a look at some of those winds. Again, these are sustained winds. These aren't your gusts. Sustained about 25, 30 miles per hour, but we're going to be looking at gusts 40, 50, even 60 miles per hour. So that's what we're talking about, Mark, in terms of how this is really going to exacerbate very quickly. We have a severe threat for tomorrow. It's not expected to be as high of a threat as we have today because the ingredients are really going to be lacking tomorrow compared to today. Now, the key thing is they're not going to be lacking entirely, so we do still have the severe threat. Again, you can see it's mainly in this red region right here. That does include Jackson, Mississippi, Lake Charles, Shreveport, and also down into Houston. But the stronger storms and the general thunderstorms will stretch a little bit farther out, including the city of Atlanta. So here's a look at tomorrow. If you remember, for today, we had medium shear, medium lift, medium instability. That's going to change tomorrow. Really, the only thing we're going to have medium tomorrow is the shear. Now, with that said, if the other elements can come into place, that shear can compensate for some of the others. So keep that in mind. Just because we may not necessarily have a high amount of the ingredients tomorrow, they're still going to be there. So you have to keep a close eye on the development. Here we've got very moist, low-level flow that's going to be coming up. So the moisture, especially along the Gulf, is going to be plentiful. It's just a little bit farther north. We're not really going to have much of that moisture in place. That cold front tracks east. Keep in mind, we've got nice warm temperatures setting up out ahead of that front. That's going to help trigger some storms as well. Very weak low-level jet stream winds as well going into tomorrow. And Mark, off to you.
While some are reveling in the mild winter, others are seeing the warm temperatures really eat into their bottom line.
Now, a few are caught in the seasonal limbo, where it's still too cold for spring activities, but a little too warm for winter business. Now, Dylan Woolenhouse with our affiliate KARE in Minneapolis shows us how the warm winter has put one man's profession.
Yeah, it has been quite the winter season. Such a lack of cold, especially for the month of February.
That's right, and it's going to be a weird one going forward because we're really going to get a bit of a roller coaster. So take a look at Minneapolis, for example. 61 today. It's going to feel way more like, say, May or June, getting closer into summer. Now, here's the thing. You're going to drop off. It's going to feel cool. But the interesting thing to note is, like, Tuesday through Thursday, it's actually just average. It's more of that mental block, but then I feel like it's really going to hit people hard, probably when we get to the end of the week and the temperatures are actually finally below normal for a change.
You could say temps would be colder than what we had through much of the month of February for a couple of days here. I mean, for today, 220 million people have high temps above average. That's the eastern half of the country, basically, everyone included in that. And some of those areas in the pinks and the whites, 25 to 30 degrees above average, so significant warmth.
That's right. Again, impressive. And even the ones farther south, where you're talking 10, 15, 20, that's still also impressive as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's noticeably warm air thanks to the southerly flow and the jet stream that's up into central Canada. But alas, there are changes on the way.
That cold air is going to dip back down, not just for the Midwest, but we're also talking the Great Lakes region and into the Northeast as well. Now, temporarily per se, you'll get a lift of some warm air, maybe into the southern region of the Midwest, but it's not really going to last very long.
Yeah, that cool air is going to dominate really as we leave this really warm period and then go through the rest of the week into the weekend. The northern tier is going to get a couple good shots of cold. In fact, you could argue that some of the coldest air of the entire northern hemisphere is going to be just north of the U.S. border. And if we get anything to kind of disturb that a bit, we can have a couple really good shots of cold air coming in over the next couple weeks.
That's right. So take Omaha, for example, going from 70s today down to the 50s as we go into tomorrow. And then by Wednesday, again, look at Minneapolis. We're just barely above the freezing mark for the high temperature.
Areas that we keep talking about how there's no ice on the lakes and people can't do their ice fishing, and we've heard reports of people falling into thin ice, are going to have high temperatures in the 20s and 30s, lows significantly colder than that.
But keep in mind, that still doesn't mean it's going to be safe to go on that ice, because it wouldn't be more of a long-term thing as well. The kind of snow that closes an interstate, we'll talk about that coming up. And for the answer to that, we turn it to our very own Carl Parker. So we've got a lot to talk about. Let's get right to it.
Yeah, and there's snow coming down right now across the Cascades, and the snow levels are pretty low. It's only 35 in Seattle right now, so that's getting down into the lowlands, but temperatures are going to top out in the 40s today, so probably won't have any problem, lingering problem on the road. Certainly up at pass level, there are going to be plenty of issues, about generally half a foot to a foot of snow on the way there, and more snow here in Northern California and the Sierra, as well as into the Mount Shasta area, and there's a lot more on the way. You can see the big upper low that came through in the last 24 hours right in there, and so behind that you've still got this onshore flow coming into the northwest. So we've still got, with the orographic lift, the lift from the mountains, we're still getting snow across a lot of the mountains. But then on top of that, there is a system that is now well offshore. You can see the enhancement in the cloud there that is way west of California, and that's going to be moving in the next couple of days. So this is the model forecast. You can see how the onshore flow continues there, but then notice as we see a little more precip, a more organized area coming into frame, and this is getting into early tomorrow. So as that moves in, we see a lot more moisture spreading in across the northwest in particular. This one not so much aiming on California, and then across the northern part of the Rockies there. And so we're talking about the Bitterroots and Treasure Valley and into the Wind River Range, and a lot of those areas doing really, really well over the next few days. This is the next 5 days. I mean, look at that. That's a huge area of a couple of feet of snow, as well as here into parts of Montana and Idaho and the Cascades. And so, you know, in all of these areas where water is an ongoing issue, it's really good that we continue to build up the snowpack across this region.
Yeah, the ski resorts are just in heaven right now, just thoroughly enjoying all of the free snow, if you will, that they've been getting out of this season.
Yeah, it was a little dicey for a while there when it was so dry across the west. A lot of resorts were asking themselves about what, you know, might lie ahead, and at least it's been a real good year for them. So now, looking into the weekend, we're going to watch a stronger disturbance coming out of the Pacific and into the middle of the country. Now, the models have been differing on this. Basically, right in there, that blue line is roughly our rain snow line. So the green there is precip of all types, and everything that's north of that blue line is generally going to be snow or freezing rain or sleet. So we watched this GFS model, the American model, breaking out snow across parts of the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. That's Saturday evening, then the low getting a little bit stronger going into Sunday morning. So that could actually mean a pretty good snowfall right around the Mason-Dixon line, maybe DC, Baltimore getting several inches of snow if it were to happen exactly like that, and then the storm moves off through Sunday. Now here's the European model, and it seems like this is often the case, that the European tends to show a weaker system as as compared to the GFS, and that's exactly what it's doing in this case. So it's not showing as much snowfall, some snowfall. It's got the storm, so that's good. There's at least that consistency, but whether or not it's a giant snowstorm remains to be seen.
And DC is used to those close calls, so they know they've got to keep watching the forecast until right up until the day before when they can really get that more exact information.
No doubt.
All right, thank you so much, Bob. We appreciate it.